Hi and welcome to our new YouTube tutorial. In this video we're going to be building the complete website from scratch with HTML, CSS and JavaScript. The project is going to be something like a tour's website template. I called it the road. We will start to build this project from scratch, and it's going to be a kind of different one from our previous tutorials because, as we said, we will build the entire website. Again, the project will be built based on HTML, CSS and JavaScript. We will use CSS Flexbox as the layout tool. Also, the project will include different CSS features like CSS variables, CSS animations and lots of other interesting and cool stuff. So I hope the project will be interesting and you will enjoy it. Okay, before we start to build the project, let's go ahead and describe it. So we will have a couple of different sections. We will start with the header, which includes several parts. We have some text on the left side. Also, there is an animated logo at the top right corner of the header. And besides that, you can see here an animated air balloon. It seems that it flies in the air, and actually we will create this effect with CSS 3D transforms, transitions and CSS keyframes. At the top left corner we have a menu icon. If I click it, then the navigation menu will display with a couple of navigation items, and also at the top right corner the closing X button will display. If I click it, then the menu will close. Alright, let's move on to the next section, in which we have 3 cards representing the most popular tours. Each card has 2 sides, the front side and the back side. In the front side we have some details about the tours, and if I click the price button, then the back side will display the price details. Alright, next comes the stories section. I mean the stories of the customers from the tours. This section will have a video background. I decided to use it because nowadays it's a popular and in-demand feature. So you will be able to learn how to set the video as the background. After that, we will build a contact section with a couple of input fields, and also this section will have an animated background image. As you can see, it changes its colors and we get a kind of day and night effect. Alright, lastly we have here a little footer with the navigation items, and they have some nice and cool hover effect. Okay. So that's what we are going to build. The project will be responsive to different screen sizes. If we open up Developer Tools, then switch to the responsive mode and check the project on different screen sizes. You will find that it's fully responsive. So you'll be able to learn how to use CSS media queries to make the project responsive. I want to mention here one thing. The project is built with the desktop first approach. We have built it on the largest screen size. I mean the screen size with 1920 pixels of width and 1080 pixels of height. So throughout the working process it might not look good on smaller screen sizes, but at the end of the day we will make it responsive. If you're using a relatively smaller screen size, then you can just switch on responsive mode and specify here the width and height of the larger screen size. Alright, so actually we are ready to start to work on the project. I've created a new folder on the desktop called the road, in which I have a couple of different files and a folder for images. Let's go ahead and open it in VS Code. So right now CSS and JavaScript files are empty. As for the index.html file, we have here the basic structure of the HTML document. In the head element I have 2 different links, one for the Google font and the second one for the CSS file. And also I have prepared script tag for JavaScript file. You are able to download the starter files as well as the final version of the project from the GitHub link in the description. When you go to the link, you need to select a starter or final version from the branches. Once you choose it, you can download the zip file from here, or you can clone the repository if you're familiar with Git and GitHub. Okay, let's run the project to the browser. For that, I'm going to use one of the VS Code packages called Live Server. It allows us to run the project live to the browser and make updates without refreshing the page each time. So I recommend to install and use this package. Okay, so finally, let's place the editor and the browser like so. Before we insert here some content, I'm going to create some reset and common styles in CSS. First of all, I'm going to get rid of the default margin and padding from every element. In order to select them, we have to use an asterisk. And then let's set margin and padding, both of them to 0. Then I'm going to change the font family. Throughout this tutorial, I'm going to use one of the Google fonts called Volcorn Serif. Also, I want to get rid of the default bullets from the list items using list style type none. Also, we don't need the default link styles, so let's use text decoration none. After that, I'm going to set the box sizing property to border box. And finally, get rid of the default outlines using outline none. Okay, so throughout this project, I'm going to use rem as the measurement unit. By default, 1 rem equals to 16 pixels because the font size of the HTML element is equal to 16 pixels. I want to convert 1 rem into 10 pixels. So for that, we have to decrease the font size of the HTML element. Let's make it 62.5%. Alright, next I want to create a couple of CSS variables for the colors that we're going to use. We will use 5 different colors, and instead of specifying them each time, I think it would be better if we store them in the variables and then use those variables. So we need to use the variables on the global scope. Therefore, let's select a root and then specify the color names and the values. The first one is going to be primary color. Let's insert here 2B8 1E4. Next we will have secondary color. I'm going to use here EEE. Next one should be white color. FFF. Then I'm going to use gray color with value 555. And finally light gray color 777. Alright, that's it about the colors. Next I'm going to select the class center. Actually, throughout this project we're going to use Flexbox to manage the layout, and in most cases we will need to center the elements perfectly. For that we have to use 3 different property value pairs, and in order to avoid writing them every time, we will insert them here and we'll just add class center to the HTML elements, which we need to be centered. So let's insert here display flex, then justify content center and align items center. Alright, so that's it about the common styles. Now it's time to start to create the HTML markup. Let's open div element, which is going to be container. Actually, it will include the entire content of the project. So we're going to create the markup of the header, and then we will add to it some CSS. So we will build our project section by section. Let's open header element and assign to it the class header. So the header will consist of 3 different parts. The first one is going to be the text, which was placed on the left side. So let's open a div element with a class header text. The text will be represented by a heading and paragraph, so we need to open the h1 heading element with class heading and with text around the world. Next, I'm going to open p element with the class name header paragraph. And then let's insert here some text. Traveling. It leaves you speechless. Then turns you into a storyteller. Alright, next I'm going to insert here an image. I mean the image of the air balloon. Let's specify here the path of the image. We have the folder images, and then we need to select airballoon.png. Next, I'm going to insert here the text header image, I mean as the value of the alt attribute. And finally, let's assign to the image element class attribute with the value header image. Okay, so here we have the air balloon image, and finally we have to create a logo. As you remember, we will use an animated text as the logo, so let's open a div element with the class logo. Next, I'm going to insert here the h1 heading element. So each letter in the heading will be represented by the span element, because we need to create animations with a different delay time for each letter. So let's open span element and insert here the first letter T. Then duplicate it 6 times and change the letters. For the second one we need H, then E, then R, O, A, and D, the road. Alright, so that's it about the markup for the header. Now it's time to customize this section. Before that, I want to take care of the container. So let's go ahead and select it. I'm going to change the background color. So as you know, we created a couple of variables for colors, and in order to use them, we have to use here the var function, which actually stands for the variable. As an argument, we have to pass here the name of the variable, in this case, secondary color. So as you see, background color is changed for the container. Next, I'm going to create some space around it using margin. Let's make it 3.5 rem. Besides that, let's create some shadow effect. Let's use box shadow with the following values. We need 0, then 1 rem, 3 rem, and as the color, let's use again var function with the color gray. Alright, so right now that's it about the container. Next, we need to start to work on the header. First of all, let's define width and height. I'm going to set width as 100%. As for the height, I'm going to make some calculation. Let's take a look at the finished project. So as you see, at the top of the header and at the bottom of it, we have the same amount of space, each of them equal to 3.5 rem, because the size of the margin equals to 3.5 rem. Now, in order to create the same space at the end of the header, I'm going to use the following calculation. We need to use calc function, which stands for calculate. Then we need to subtract to 100 viewport height 7 rem. Actually, 100 viewport height is equal to 100% of the viewport, and the 7 rem is the sum of the space at the top and at the bottom. So as you can see, now we have the same space around the header. Okay, next let's define the background for the header. I'm going to set the image as the background. First of all, let's use linear gradient. I'm going to use 2 similar colors but with different opacities. So the color is going to be 18, 113, 255, and the opacity 0.5. Next we need the same color but with opacity 0.3. After that, I'm going to specify the path of the image using the URL function. So we have folder called images, and we need to select header-bg.jpg. Next we need center and no repeat. And finally, let's define the size of the background. I'm going to make it cover. Alright, so as you can see, the image is set as the background and it already looks good. The next thing regarding the header is to align its child elements. For that, I'm going to use Flexbox. Actually, I will not assign flex properties to it manually. As you know, we have already created class center, and I will just assign this class name to the header in the HTML. So all three parts of the header are centered inside of it. Okay, let's go ahead and customize the header text. So we need some common styles for the heading and the paragraph as well, and for that we can add some styles to their parent element. So I want to center the text inside of the box. Let's insert here text align center, then transform text into uppercase, and create some space between letters. Let's set letter spacing to 0.1 rem. And now we can customize heading and paragraph separately. Let's start with the heading. I'm going to increase its font size. Let's make it 8 rem. And then change color. I'm going to use here white color. Okay, that's it about the heading. Next, let's take care of the paragraph. Let's go ahead and select this element. Increase the font size, make it 3 rem. Then change the font weight. I'm going to make it 500. And finally change the color. In this case, I'm going to use secondary color. Alright, so the paragraph is styled as well, but I think it is stretched too much, so I'm going to define the maximum width for the paragraph. Let's use max width property and make it 70 rem. And finally, in order to center the text, let's use margin auto. Okay, so now I think it looks much better. Actually, with header text we are almost done. The only thing that I want to do is to add some shadow effect to both of the elements. So let's add text shadow to the parent element with the values 0, 0.3 rem, 0.5 rem, and as the color, let's use gray color. Alright. So finally we are done with the header text, and now we have to move on and start to work on the logo. It should be placed at the top right corner of the header. For that we need to use the position. Let's select the logo and make its position absolute. Next, I'm going to make the position of the header relative because we need to define the position of the logo according to its parent element. And after that, let's define top and right positions. I'm going to make both of them 4 rem. So the logo is placed at the top right corner, and now we have to customize it. As you know, each letter is wrapped by this span element, so let's go ahead and select it. Let's increase the font size, make it 2 rem. Then change font weight. I'm going to make them bolder, so let's assign to it 900. Then change color. In this case, I'm going to use primary color. Then transform text into uppercase. And finally, change the background color. make it white. Okay, now we need to define the width and height of each letter. Let's make both of them 3.5 rem. As you can see, width and height are not applied to letters. The reason is that this span element is an inline element, therefore we cannot define a width and height for it. In order to fix that, I'm going to make it block level element for now, because eventually we will use flexbox. So let's use here display block. Now the width and height are applied to the letters, and also they are placed vertically in a column, because it's the default behavior of the block level elements. Alright, now in order to place them side by side horizontally, let's use flexbox. Select H1 heading element as the parent element for the spans. Assign to it display flex. Okay, now we need some space between the letters and also make them rounded. Use margin with the value 0.5 rem, and then border radius 50%. Besides that, I'm going to get rid of display block from here, because right now these span elements are flex items and we no longer need this property. Alright, the last thing that we need here is to place letters in the center of those circles. For that, let's use again class center and assign it to all the span elements. Alright, so the logo is customized, and now it's time to create the animation. For that we will use CSS keyframes. We need @sign keyframes, which should be followed by the name of the animation. Actually, you can name the animation whatever you want. So inside the keyframes we can define some CSS rules with some steps, and then we can apply those rules to the element using the animation property. So we will have 5 different steps. They will be represented by the percentage values. I'm going to start with the 0% and go through 100%. From 0 to 10%, the letters should not move. So therefore we need here the following. We have to indicate here 0%. Then inside of the curly braces, I'm going to use transform with translate y function, which should have the value 0, because we don't need to move the letters. Next step is going to be 10%, and actually we need here the same, transform translate y 0. After that, from 10% to 15%, I'm going to move the letters up. So next step is going to be 15%, and we need here transform translate y with the value minus 100%. Then from 15% to 20%, we need to drop letters down back to their positions. So on 20%, we need again transform translate y 0. And finally, from 20% to 100%, letters should stay on their positions. So we need again transform translate y 0. Alright, so these are the rules which we should apply to the letters, but with a different delay time. We need a different delay time to move them in order. So we have to select each span element separately, and for that I'm going to use the nth child pseudo class. So let's select logo h1 and then span followed by the nth child selector, and we have to specify here the first span element. Now we need to assign to the element different animation properties. The first one is going to be animation name. Then it should be followed by the duration of the animation. For that we have to use the property called animation duration. Let's set it to 5 seconds. Next we need the delay time for the first letter. I'm going to use 0.1 second. In order to define the delay time, we have to use animation delay. Let's assign to it 0.1 second. And finally, we need to specify the value of the animation iteration count property. In our case, we need to run the animation infinitely, so we need here infinite. Alright, so we have defined the animation for the first letter. For that, we have used here a couple of animation properties. Basically, in practice, we can use a shortened way. We just need one CSS property called animation instead of using several animation properties. So we can insert here animation and the following values. The first one is going to be the name. Then we need duration, 5 seconds, followed by the delay, 0.1 second. And finally, we need infinite. We can simply get rid of all those properties from here. So let's go ahead and duplicate this code 6 times because we have 7 letters. Then change the number of the letters and also change the delay time. For the second one, we need 0.2 seconds. Next, we need 0.3 seconds. Then for the fourth letter, we need 0.4 seconds. 0.5 seconds. Next one is going to be 0.6 seconds, and then finally we need 0.7 seconds. Alright, so as you can see, the animation is working and we have here nice, cool effects. Actually, we are done with the logo and now we have to move on and take care of the image. I mean the air balloon. Let's go ahead and select an image. First of all, let's decrease its size, make its width 35%. Let's take a look once again at the finished version of the project. So as you can see, air balloon is moving through the header's background image. To achieve that, we need to create a 3D environment, and for that in CSS we have a property called perspective, which we need to assign to the header. In general, the perspective property defines how far the object is away from the user. The lower value will create a more intensive 3D effect. So in our case, we need a little bit higher value. So let's assign to it 100 rand. Alright, like the logo, we have to use CSS keyframes here as well. I'm going to name the animation as image float. So overall, we will have 5 different steps. We will move the balloon through the image using the transform with translate Z function. It allows us to move the object in 3D space. So from 0% to 40%, we need the following properties and values. We need here transform translate Z with value 40 rand. In this case, we use a positive value and it actually moves the object close to the user. In order to show it, I'm going to assign it to the image directly. So that's the way how translate Z function works. If we make the value negative, let's say minus 400 rands, then the image will be placed deep inside the header. At a glance, you may think that the size of the image is decreased, but in fact, the image is far away from the user. Alright, let's get rid of this line of code from here. So besides the transform property, I'm going to use opacity. During the animation, we will change the opacity slightly. On 0%, let's make it 1. Actually, you can omit this property at all here because by default opacity for every element is set to 1, but I use it anyway to make the working process clearer. Alright, that's it about the 0%. The next step is going to be 40%. So from 0 to 40%, we need to move air balloon deep inside the image. Therefore, we need here transform translate Z with value minus 500 rand. And besides that, we need to move the balloon a little bit to the right side. So I'm going to use translate X function with value 150 rem. We need this because the balloon moves to the center of the image by default. Lastly, let's use opacity. I'm going to decrease it slightly. Let's make it 0.8. Alright, the next step is going to be 70%. Let's duplicate this step here. I'm going to change the values. We need 70%. So from 40% to 70%, we need to move the balloon even deeper inside the image. So I'm going to pass here minus 1500 rem. As for the X direction, we need to change the direction of the balloon explicitly at the same time. So I'm going to increase the value of the translate X function. Let's make it 800 rem. And finally decrease the opacity, make it 0.6. Okay, the next step is going to be 80%. So once again, let's duplicate this code. From 70% to 80%, we need to move the balloon back, closer to the user. So let's change the values. Let's insert here minus 50 rem. Then we need 100 rem and the opacity 0.8. And finally, on 100%, we need to make the value of translate Z property function equal to the starting point. So we need to transform translate Z with value 40 rem and the opacity 1. Alright, so with the keyframes we are done, and now we need to apply those rules to the image using the animation property. Let's assign to it the name image float. Right now I'm going to define the duration as 5 seconds in order to see quickly the entire animation process. Also, we need here to make the animation infinite. So as you can see, the balloon is moving in the right way. The only problem that we have here is those scroll bars. And actually we can fix that simply by using overflow hidden, which should be assigned to the container. Alright, so everything works fine. Let's just increase the duration of the animation. I'm going to make it 150 seconds. Alright, so that's it about the header. Everything works perfectly, and now we have to move on and start to work on the next section. Actually, step by step the code becomes larger because the project itself is big. Therefore, before we start to build the next section, I think it would be better if we add some comments in our HTML and CSS files. So we have here a header. Let's insert header. Then end of header. The next section is going to be about popular tours. So let's add here popular tours and then end of popular tours. As for the CSS, at the beginning we have some common styles. So I'm going to put here common styles. And then at the end, write end of common styles. Then we have the header. Then end of header. And finally, I'm going to add here popular tours. End of popular tours. Alright, let's take a look once again at the finished project. So we're going to build the second section called the popular tours. It consists of heading and 3 different cards. Each card has 2 sides, front and back. On the front side we have a button image. image background with heading, and down below we have some conditions about each tour. If we click the price button, then the backside will display with the price and the button for booking. If I click the back button here, then the front side will display back. Alright, so that's it what we're going to do. Let's go ahead and start to create the HTML markup. I'm going to open section element with class popular tours. Next, I'm going to insert here h1 heading with the class name popular tours heading. And with the text, the most popular tours. Next, we need div element, which is going to be the wrapper of the cards. So let's assign to it a class name, cards wrapper. After that, I'm going to create the card itself. So let's go ahead and open a div tag with the class card. So we will create one card and then we will duplicate it twice. As we said, each card consists of two different parts, the front side and the back side. So let's insert another div element with the class name front side. So in that div element we will have an image, heading, list, and the button. So let's insert here img element. In the source attribute, let's specify the path of the file. We have images folder, and then I'm going to select forest.jpg. In the alt attribute, I'm going to put forest, and also I'm going to add here class attribute with the value card image. Next, we need the h1 heading element with the class name tour name. Let's insert here the name of the tour, which is going to be the wild forest. So the conditions of the tour will be represented by the list. Let's open UL element with the class name card list. So overall we will have 5 different list items. Let's open li element with the class name card list item. And insert here the first condition, 7 days tour. Then I'm going to duplicate it 4 times, and also we need to change the content. The second item is going to be up to 20 people. Next we will have 4 tour guides. Also sleep in private tents. And finally, I'm going to put here difficulty medium. The last element in the front side is going to be the button. So let's open button tag with the class name navigation button. I used here navigation because we will navigate between the front and back sides with the help of this button. Let's insert here price. Besides that, I'm going to use HTML5 entities. I want to display the greater than signs. So for that we need to insert here ampersand GT, which stands for greater than. Then we need semicolon, and once again the same characters. Alright, so that's it about the front side. Let's go ahead and create the back side. It's going to be smaller because we will have just 3 different elements. Let's go ahead and open div tag with the class name backside. Then let's go ahead and copy this button from here. So instead of the price, we have to put here back, but we need to write it after the HTML5 entities. And also, instead of the greater than signs, we need less than signs. So instead of GT, we need here LT. Okay, next comes the heading. So let's open H3 heading tag with the class name Tor price. I'm going to put here $3.99. And finally, we need another button for booking. So let's open button tag with the class card button. And then insert here booking. Alright, so that's it about the first card. Overall, we will have 3 of them. Let's go ahead and duplicate the entire card twice. And then change a couple of things. We need to select here river.jpg. Also change alt attribute. We need here river. Then as the heading, I'm going to put here along the river. Next, I'm going to change the conditions. We need here 9 days tour, up to 30 people, 7 tour guides. The next condition is going to be the same, so I'm going to leave it as it is. As for the difficulty, let's make it hard. And also change the price. Let's make it $4.99. Okay, let's go ahead and change those things for the third card as well. We need here c.jpg. Also change the value of the alt attribute. I'm going to put here c. The heading is going to be the island beach. Then change the conditions. We need here 5 days tour. Next one will be up to 40 people. 8 tour guides. Then sleep in hotel. Then I'm going to make the difficulty easy. And finally change the price, make it $5.99. Alright, so the HTML markup is ready. Right now, cards look ugly because we have here just the pure HTML. Let's go ahead and start to write some CSS. First of all, I'm going to create some space on top and bottom. So let's select section element, which has the class popular tours, and assign to it padding. I'm going to make padding on top 5 rem, then 0 on the right side, 10 rem at the bottom, and finally 0 on the left side. Okay, next I'm going to take care of the heading of the section. Let's select this element. So first of all, let's increase the font size, make it 8 rem. Then I'm going to put the heading in the center using text align center. Next, I'm going to create some space at the bottom of the heading using margin bottom. Let's set it to 8 rem. Change the color. Let's use here color primary. And finally, I'm going to create some shadow effect using text shadow with the following values. We need here 0, then 0.1 rem, 0.2 rem, and the primary color. Okay, so as you can see, the heading is styled and it looks good. Next, I'm going to take care of the cards. First of all, let's align them side by side horizontally. For that, I'm going to select cart wrapper, assign to it display flags. Then, in order to create even space between the carts, let's use justify content, space evenly. Okay, so the cards are placed side by side, but right now we don't have the space between them. The reason is the width of the images, so let's go ahead and take care of them. First of all, select the card itself and define its width. I'm going to set it to 35 rem. Then select an image with the class card image and define its width, make it 100%. So in this case, the image will inherit the width from the parent element. Now, as you can see, images are smaller and we have the space between the cards. Alright, now let's go ahead and start to work on the front side. I'm going to select it. At first, let's place the text in the center using text align center. Then change the background color. I'm going to use here white color. After that, I'm going to make the front side a little bit rounded using border radius 0.3 rem. Alright, so right now we see a border radius only at the bottom because of the image. So we need to make the top corners of the image rounded as well. So let's assign to image border radius. When you want to make the individual corners of the element rounded, then you can assign several values to the border radius property. The first one belongs to the top left corner. Let's make it 0.3 rem. Next comes the top right corner. I'm going to set it to the same value, 0.3 rem. Then we have the bottom right corner. Let's make it 0. And finally, we need to specify the bottom left corner. Let's make it 0 as well. Alright, now we have border radius on all 4 corners of the card. Let's go ahead and customize the heading element. First of all, I'm going to increase the font size. Let's make it 2.5 rem. Change the font weight. Let's set it to 700. And also transform text into uppercase. After that, I'm going to change the position of the heading. I want to place it at the bottom right corner of the image. So let's make its position absolute. Then, in order to position it according to its parent element, which is the front side, we need to assign to the parent position relative. And after that, let's define the top and right properties. I'm going to set top to 30%. As for the right position, let's make it 1.5 rem. Okay, so the heading is positioned. Next, I'm going to change its color. Let's make it white. And also add to it some shadow effect. Use text shadow with the values 0, 0, 1 rem, and the black color. Alright, so that's it about the heading. Let's go ahead and move on to the list. Let's select list element using card list. I'm going to define its width. I want to decrease its width. So let's make it 80%. Then in order to center the list, we need to use margin auto. And finally, let's create some space inside of the list. I'm going to set padding on top to 2 rem, then 0 on the right side, 3 rem at the bottom, and 0 on the left side. Alright, now it's time to customize the list items, so let's go ahead and select them. First of all, let's define the font size, make it 1.6 rem. Then change the font weight, set it to 500, and change the color. In this case, I'm going to use light gray color. Okay, so the items look better, but we need to add to them some more styles. Let's create some space at the top and the bottom of the item using margin with the values 2 rem and 0. Then I'm going to create border at the bottom, so let's use property called border bottom with the values 0.1 rem, solid, and the primary color. So as you can see, each list item has a border at the bottom, but they are too close to each other, so we need to add some space. And let's create the space using padding at the bottom with the value 1.5 rem. Alright, so everything is styled except the price button. Right now we are not going to style it because both buttons, I mean the price button and the back button, have the same class, and I think it would be better if we style at first the back side and then take care of the buttons. So let's go ahead and select the back side. First of all, I'm going to take care of the position. Let's make it absolute. Then in order to position it according to the card, let's assign to the card position relative. Then define the top position. Let's make it 0. And change the background color. Let's set it to the primary color. Alright, so that's the way how the backside looks right now. I'm going to expand it to the entire card. For that, let's set width and height to 100%. Alright, next let's make it rounded and also add to it some shadow effect. I'm going to use border radius with the value 0.3 rem, and then box shadow with the values 0, 2 rem, 4 rem, and the color 777. Okay, now we have to align the elements inside the backside, and then we have to customize them. I'm going to place the elements in the center. For that, let's use Flexbox and just add the class name center to the backside in HTML. Okay, so the elements are placed in the center. They're placed side by side, and actually we don't need it. We have to change the flex direction and make it a column. Alright, next let's go ahead and customize the price and the button for booking. Select tour price. Let's increase its font size, make it 5 rem. Change the font weight. I'm going to set it to 300. Then make the color white. And also create some space at the bottom using margin bottom 3 rem. Alright, so the price looks nice. Let's go ahead and move on to the button. Let's select it. I'm going to change the color. Let's make it primary. Then change the background color. I'm going to make it white. Get rid of the default border using border none. And then change the font size, make it 2.5 rem. Alright, let's go ahead and add some more styles. I'm going to create some space inside of the button using padding. Let's set it to 1 rem on top and bottom and 2 rems on the right and left sides. Also, I'm going to increase the space between the letters using letter spacing, 0.2 rem. Then make the button rounded using border radius. Let's set it to 5 rem. And finally, change the type of the cursor, make it pointer. Alright, so the price and button are customized, and now it's time to style the navigation buttons. I mean the back button and the price button, which is placed on the front side. So let's select the navigation button. First of all, I'm going to place it at the top left corner of the card. So let's set its position to absolute. Then define the top and right properties. I'm going to set both of them to 0.5 rem. Okay, so the button is positioned. Now let's go ahead and customize it. I'm going to set padding to 0.5 rem. Then change background color. In this case, I'm going to use RGBA value. I mean the white color, with the opacity 0.8. Then change the color. I'm going to use here light gray color. Then make the button rounded using border radius 0.3 rem. And get rid of the default border using border none. Okay, finally, let's customize the text. Define the font size, make it 1.5 rem. Then set font weight to 600. Also, transform text into uppercase. Then create some space between letters using letter spacing, 0.2 rem. And finally, make cursor pointer. Okay, so both sides, I mean the front and back, are styled. Everything is prepared to make the card work. First of all, we need to display the front side back. For that, let's use the index property. Let's set it to 10. After that, we need to create a 3D environment because, as you know, the front side and the back side should move in 3D space. So in order to create the 3D environment, we have to use a property called perspective. Let's set it to 150 rem. Then we need to move the back side with the translate z function. So let's use transform, translate z with the value -5 rem. And besides that, we need to move it a little bit to the right side. For that, let's use translate x function with the value 3 rem. Alright, so both sides are placed in the right way. Next, I'm going to decrease the opacity for both sides, but with different values. I'm going to make the opacity of the front side 0.9. As for the back side, let's assign to it opacity 0.5. Alright, so now we are ready to create the click event and make the card work. For that, we are going to use JavaScript. So once we click the button, then the back side should display, and also the opacities and shadows should change. So let's go to script.js file. First of all, we need to select both buttons. Both of them have the same class name, navigation button. And in order to select them, I'm going to use a query selector all method. Inside the parentheses, we have to specify the class name, which is navigation button. So this method returns a node list, which is an array-like object. We need to transform it into an array. Then we have to loop through the buttons and attach to both of them onClick event handler. In order to transform node list into an array, we need to use ES6 array.from method. Then to loop through the items and to attach to them onClick event handler, let's use one of the array helper methods called forEach. Actually, this method helps us to execute the function for each array item separately. We have to pass here a callback function which should take one argument, and it's going to be the current item of the array. And now we need to attach to the item onClick event handler. So we need item.onClick, and we have to assign to it an arrow function. Alright, so let me explain what we're going to do. Actually, we're going to create a new class in CSS, which then will be assigned to the card from JavaScript. This class will help us to define new CSS styles, which then should be applied to the front and back sides on click. So now we need to assign to the card the class change. It will be the name of the new class. In order to select the card, I'm going to use DOM navigation. In this case, item refers to the navigation button. Then we have to move one level up using the parent element property. Then we need to move again one level up, and finally we will reach to the card. Okay, now we have to use a property called class list, which stores all the classes the element has. And then we have to use the toggle method. So the toggle method adds the class name to the element if it doesn't exist and removes it from the element if it exists. Finally, let's insert here the class name change. Alright, so that's it about the JavaScript. Let's go back to CSS file and select the class name change. It should be followed by the front side, but we need to use here one of the CSS combinators called child selector, which is expressed by the greater than sign. Actually, the child selector selects all elements that are the children of a specified element. So once we click the button, then the card will get a new class change, and this entire selection will be valid. Now we have to define the styles that we want to assign to the front side on click. Both sides will exchange their positions, shadows, opacities, and the z-index property. So for the front side, we need here transform, translate z function with the value -5 rem. Also, we need translate x with the value 3 rem. Next comes box shadow with the values 0, 2 rem, 4 rem, and the color 777. Next, I'm going to set opacity to 0.5. As for the z-index, it should be equal to 0. Alright, next we need the same for the back side. I'm going to copy this code from here and paste it down below with the back side. We need back side instead of the front side. Let's change the values here. We need 0 and then again 0. As for the box shadow, it should have 0, 0.5 rem, 2 rem, and the color AAA. Next, I'm going to set opacity to 0.9. As for the z-index, I'm going to get rid of it. Alright, so if I click the buttons, then the card will work fine. The only thing that we have to do is to make the effect smoother. For that, we have to use transition. Let's insert here opacity with the duration 0.4 seconds. Next, we need transform with the same duration, and also box shadow 0.4 seconds. Actually, we could use here all instead of those properties, but then in all we would include z-index as well, and it would break the effect. Okay, let's copy this line of code and paste it for the backside as well. Alright, so now everything works perfectly. We have nice, cool transition effects. Actually, we're done with this section and it's time to move on and start to build the next one. The next section is going to be the stories. The stories from the customers. Let's take a look at the finished project. So we have 2 customers with their stories and the video background. So throughout this part, you will be able to learn how to set the video as the background. Alright, as usual, let's go ahead and start to create HTML markup. Actually, first we will build the stories, and then after that we'll take care of the video background. Okay, let's insert here new comments, stories, then end of stories, and open section element with the class stories. Next, we need a div element which will wrap both stories. So let's assign to it a class stories wrapper. So overall, we will have 2 stories. Let's open div element, which will be used to create and manipulate the background of the story. So assign to it a class story bg, and then put here the story itself. I'm going to open another div tag with a class story. So each story will consist of an image, heading, and a paragraph. Let's insert here img element. In the source attribute, I'm going to specify the path of the image. Inside of the images folder, I'm going to select story img1.jpg. Then, as the value of the alt attribute, I'm going to put here customer image. And finally, I'm going to add here class attribute with the value story image. So the image should be followed by the text of the story. As we said, it's going to be the heading and the paragraph. They will be wrapped by the div element. So let's create it with the class story text. Then insert here h1 heading tag with the class name story heading. I'm going to put here some text. Let's say these were the best days of this year. Next, I'm going to create a paragraph with the class story paragraph. And I'm going to put here some dummy text. Alright, so this is the first story. We need 2 of them, so let's duplicate it once and then make some changes. I'm going to change the name of the image. It's going to be story img2.jpg. Also, change the heading here. Right, I enjoyed this great tour. Alright, so right now that's it about the HTML markup. Let's go ahead and start to write some CSS. I'm going to insert here new comments, stories, end of stories. Then select the section element and create some space at the top and bottom using padding. We need here 10 rem and then 0 on the left and right sides. Okay, after that, let's select the wrapper of the stories. So I'm going to place stories in the center of the section, and they should be placed vertically. For that, let's use flexbox. Display flex. In general, display flex aligns elements side by side horizontally. Therefore, we have to change the direction, and we need to make it column. So we need flex direction, column. Then, in order to center the elements horizontally, we need align items center. Okay, next let's select background of the story. It has class name story bg. So eventually the background of the story will be similar to white color, but right now, before we take care of the video background, let's make the background color of the stories light gray in order to make it visible. Before we move on and add some more styles to the background, let's take care of the images because right now they are too bigger. So I'm going to select the image. First of all, let's define width and height. Let's make both of them 20 rem. Also, I'm going to make them rounded using border radius with the value 50%. And besides that, we have to use object fit cover. Okay, let's go back to the background. I'm going to create some space inside of it. For that, I'm going to use padding. Let's set it to 5 rem. Then we need some space around the background. For that, let's use margin and set it to 5 rem as well. Alright, after that, let's increase the width of the background, make it 70% of this section, and then create some shadow effect using box shadow with the values 0, 2 rem, 5 rem, and as the color I'm going to use RGBA value. Let's place here 51 3 times, and then the opacity 0.4. Alright, so step by step the story looks better. Let's take a look once again at the finished project. As you can see, the shape of the background is different, it is skewed, and we're going to achieve that using transform with skew x function. Actually, it allows us to skew the element according to the x-axis. So we need transform, then skew x function, and inside the parentheses I'm going to insert 20 degrees. Okay, so as you can see, the background is skewed, but we have here a little problem. The content of the story is skewed as well. In order to fix that, we can skew the story itself back by the same degree. So we're going to select story, and I'm going to pass here transform skew x, and as the value I'm going to pass minus 20 degrees. Alright, so now the problem is fixed. Next I'm going to place the image and the text side by side. For that, let's use display flex. Okay, after that, let's customize heading and paragraph. But besides that, I think we need to add some space between the image and the text. So let's use margin right, 5 rem. Okay, let's go ahead and select heading element. It has class name story heading. First of all, let's take care of the font size. I'm going to make it 2.5 rem. Then transform it into uppercase. Also change the color. In this case, I'm going to use gray color. And lastly, let's create some space at the bottom using margin bottom with the value 1 rem. Okay, that's it about the heading. Let's go ahead and select paragraph with the class name story paragraph. Let's increase its font size, make it 1.8 rem, and then change the color. Use here light gray color. Alright, so the heading and paragraph look good. I want to add here 2 more things. Let's indent the paragraph a little bit and also create some space between the letters. I mean between the letters of heading and the paragraph as well. So I'm going to select their parent element, which is div with the class story text. Let's use here letter spacing 0.1 rem, Then in order to indent the paragraph, I'm going to select its first letter. For that we need to use pseudo element called first letter. So at first let's select paragraph and then add here pseudo element first letter. We need to create some space on the left side, so use margin left with the value 1 rem. Alright, so that's it about the stories. Everything is ready to start to work on the video background. First of all, let's go to the index.html file and add here HTML markup for the video. I'm going to open div tag with the class video container. Then we have to use a video tag, which actually is new in HTML5. I'm going to assign to it class name bg video. Also, we need to add here a couple of attributes. The first one is going to be autoplay. This attribute allows us to play the video automatically. The next one is going to be muted. It will play the video without a sound. And finally, we need a loop, which will play the video without stopping. Okay, after that we need to specify the source of the video using a source tag. It is actually the self-closing tag. Then we need here source attribute, in which we have to specify the path of the video. It's placed in the images folder. Besides the source attribute, we need to use a type attribute as well, in which we should specify the type of the video. I'm going to set it to video/mp4. Alright, so as you can see, the video is playing, and now we need to take care of its position. Let's go ahead and select the container. And set its position to absolute. We need to position it according to the parent element, which is the section. So let's add to it position relative. So as you see, the video is already placed as the background. Let's define the top and left properties. I'm going to set both of them to 0. Also, we have to define width and height. Let's set both of them to 100%. And besides that, let's decrease the opacity, make it 0.4. Alright, the last thing is to add a couple of styles to the video itself in order to maintain the quality of the video. I mean, to avoid stretching it or things like that. We have to use the following styles. Let's select BG video and assign to it width and height. Both of them set to 100%. And besides that, we need here object feed with value cover. Alright, finally, let's change the background color for the stories. I'm going to get rid of the current background. And then I'm going to set background color to RGBA. Let's pass here 238 3 times. And the opacity 0.85. Alright, as you can see, everything looks really nice, and actually we have finished working on this section. If you want to find some free videos, you can go ahead and visit the website called cover with 2rs.co, where you can find lots of different free videos. Alright, that's it about these stories. Let's go ahead and move on to the next section. First of all, let's take a look at the finished project. So after the stories section, we're going to build the contact section. In the center of this section, we have a couple of input fields with a submit button. At the top of the form, we have a heading, contact us, and besides that, a section has a full screen background with some animation effects. As you can see, the color is changing and it creates something like the day and night effect. Alright, so that's it what we're going to build. Let's go ahead and insert new comments in HTML file, contact, and then end of contact. Then I'm going to open section element with a class name contact. So inside the section element we will have two different parts. The first one is going to be a heading. As for the second one, it should be the form element. So let's go ahead and open h1 heading tag, which will have class name contact heading, and then insert here contact us. Next, we need form element with the class contact form. So inside that form we will have three different groups of inputs and a submit button. So let's go ahead and open div tag with class input group. In the first group we will have label and the input. Let's insert here full name with the asterisk. Then I'm going to open input tag with type text. Then I'm going to add here class attribute with the value contact input. And also we need placeholder with the text enter your name. Alright, so the second group is going to be slightly different. It will consist of two different input groups. I'm going to open div tag with class input groups. Notice that I'm using here group in the plural. So now we need to create here two different input groups. Let's grab this code from here and paste it twice. I'm going to change labels, types, and also placeholder attributes. So we need here email, then the type email, and also I'm going to change the value of the placeholder attribute. We need enter your email. As for the second input group, it's going to be for the phone. Let's change here the value of the placeholder, make it enter phone number. Alright, so now it's time to create the third input group. It will consist of a label and text area. I'm going to open div tag with the class input group. Then insert here label with the text message. So the label is going to be followed by the text area. I'm going to add to it class attribute with the value form text area. And also we need placeholder your message here. Alright, so the last thing that we want to do is to create this submit button. I'm going to do that using an input element. We need here type submit, then the value submit, and also I'm going to add here class attribute for btn. Alright, so the HTML markup is ready, all the elements are created, and now we have to move on and start to write some CSS. I'm going to insert here new comments for contact, end of contact. Let's select section element and create some space on top and bottom using padding. I'm going to make padding 15 rem on top, then 0 on the right side, 20 rem on the bottom, and 0 on the left side. Also, I'm going to place the content in the center using text align center. Okay, next I'm going to set the image as the background. Let's specify the path of the image in the URL function. I'm going to select image called contact as bg.png. Then we need center and no repeat. Besides that, I'm going to define the size of the background. Let's make it cover. Okay, so right now that's it about the section element. Let's go ahead and customize the heading. Let's select it. First of all, let's increase the font size. Make it 7 rem. Then I'm going to make the text a little bit bolder using font weight with the value 700. Transform text into uppercase. And also create some space between the letters using letter spacing 0.5 rem. Next, I'm going to change the color. Let's use here white color. Next, I'm going to add some shadow to the text using text shadow with the following values: 0, 1 rem, 2 rem, and the black color. And finally, create some space at the bottom using margin bottom 8 rem. Okay, so the heading is customized. Right now it's not quite visible, but once we add an animation to the background, it will look much better. Next, we have to take care of the form element. So let's go ahead and select it. And first of all, let's define its width and height. I'm going to set its width to 70 rem. As for the height, let's make it 50 rem. Then change the background color. In this case, I'm going to use white color, but with the RGBA value. We need to place here 255 3 times. And also, I'm going to add here the opacity 0.95. Okay, as you can see, the form is placed on the left side and we need to center it. For that, I'm going to use margin auto. Alright, next I'm going to center the content inside of the form. For that, I'm going to assign to the form element class center. So the content is centered, but input groups are placed side by side. And in order to fix that, let's change the direction of the flex and make it column. Okay, after that, I'm going to make the form slightly rounded. For that, I'm going to use border radius with value 0.5 rem. And also, let's add some shadow using box shadow with values 0, 1 rem, 3 rem, and the black color. Okay, that's it about the form. For now, let's go ahead and select the input group. First of all, let's set its width to 100%. Then I'm going to use Flexbox. We need to make input group flex container using display flex, and also we need to change the direction. Let's make it column. Okay, so right now the first input and the text area are stretched and they take up the entire width of the form. As for the second and third input elements, they are the parts of the input groups element. So let's select input groups and make its width 100%. Alright, so now all the inputs and the text area are stretched. We need some space inside of the form, and let's create that space using padding with the value 5 rem. Okay, so now we have a better result, but actually it's not what we want. We need to place the email and the phone inputs side by side, and for that I'm going to use again display flex. Now we need some space between the input fields. For that, let's at first decrease their width. So I'm going to select input groups followed by the input group. Let's go ahead and set width to 48.5%. And then after that, I'm going to assign to the input groups justify content space between. Alright, so the inputs are aligned, and next we have to customize them. First of all, create some space between the input groups. Let's assign to the input group margin with values 1 rem on top and bottom and 0 on the right and left sides. Okay, let's go ahead and customize the input and also the text area. I'm going to select both of them. At first, let's select input. Then duplicate this line of code and change input into text area. First of all, I'm going to create some space inside of the fields. Let's use for that padding. Actually, we need a little bit more space at the top because we're going to place the labels there. So we need here the values in the following way. The first one is going to be 3 rem, and the rest of the values are going to be 1 rem. Okay, next let's change the background color. Let's use here the secondary color. Also define the border. Let's add here 0.1 rem, solid, and again the secondary color. Alright, so the fields look much better, but we need to add to them some more styles. Let's decrease the font size, make it 1.4 rem. Also change the color. Let's use here light gray color. Next, I'm going to create some space between the letters. Let's make it 0.1 rem. And finally, let's make input and the text area rounded using border radius 0.5 rem. Alright, so we are almost done with the input fields. I'm going to customize them on focus. I mean, once we focus on the fields, then I want to display the border. So we have to select again input and the text area, but with the focus pseudo class. Let's add here border 0.1 rem, solid, and the color CCC. Also, let's use here a little transition in order to make the effect smoother. Right border and the duration 0.3 seconds. Alright, so that's it regarding the input fields and the text area. Now we have to take care of the labels. I'm going to customize and place them inside the fields. So let's select them. At first, let's define the font size, make it 1.2 rem. Also change the font weight, make it 600. Then I'm going to transform text into uppercase. Then use letter spacing 0.1 rem. And lastly, change the color, make it gray. Alright, so the labels look nice, and now we have to place them inside of the fields. For that, we need to make their position absolute. Then we need position relative for the input group, because we need to position the label according to the parent element. Next, let's set top and left properties, both of them to 1 rem. Alright, that's it about the labels. They look nice, and actually there is left only one element to customize, which is a submit button. So let's go ahead and select this element. First of all, I'm going to define its width. Let's set it to 100%. Then create some space inside of the element using padding with value 1 rem. Next, I'm going to define the font size as 1.6 rem. Also create some space between the letters. Then we need some space at the top using margin top 1 rem. And then change the background color, make it light gray. Alright, so that's the way how the submit button looks right now. We need to add to it some more styles. Let's change the color of the text. I'm going to make it white. Also, we need to make the button rounded using border radius 0.5 rem. Then get rid of the default border using border none. And finally, change the type of the cursor, make it pointer. Alright, so the last thing regarding the button is to create a hover effect. I'm going to change the background color slightly on hover. So let's select form btn with hover and change the background color, make it gray. Also, let's use here transition. We need background color and the duration 0.4 seconds. Okay, so now we are almost done. Before we move on and create the animation on the background, I want to mention here about one little issue. As you know, by default, you can increase the size of the text area, and if I do that, then the layout of the form element will be messed up. So, in order to avoid that, I'm going to set max height and max width for the text area. Let's go ahead and select it. Let's set max height to 15 rem. As for the max width, let's make it 100%. Alright, so now everything works perfectly. With styling we are done, and now we have to create an animation. Actually, the animation is going to be a simple one. Overall, we will have 5 different steps, and we will change the background color on each step. So let's go ahead and create keyframes. I'm going to name the animation as contact BG. So on 0%, I'm going to make background color 3D, 3D, 3D. Then on 25%, I'm going to make it CED 8E4. Next we will have 50%. As for the value, it's going to be 1E8 1F3. Next comes 75%. I'm going to make the background color FF7842. And on the last step, I mean on 100%, I'm going to make the background color again 3D, 3D, 3D. Okay, so that's it about the keyframes. They are ready. Let's assign the animation property to this section element. At first, we need to specify the name of the animation, which is contact BG. Next, let's define the duration. Right now, I'm going to set it to 10 seconds, but we will change it later. And also, we need to run the animation infinitely, so we have to write here infinite. Alright, so as you can see, the animation works fine. It runs a little bit faster, so let's change the duration, make it 35 seconds. Alright, that's it about the contact section. We have finished working on it, and now we have to move on and take care of the footer. First of all, let's insert new comments in HTML. Write footer, end of footer, and then open HTML5 footer semantic element with class name footer. So the footer will consist of two different parts. The first one is going to be a list of a couple of navigation items. As for the second part, it should be paragraph for some copyright text. If we hover over the items, then they will rotate and we will get some 3D effect using shadow. At a glance, it seems that the items are moving up. Let's go ahead and create a list. It should be represented by div element and a couple of links. Let's open div tag and assign to it class footer list. Then insert here link element with class footer link and with the text home. So overall we will have 5 different items. Let's duplicate it 4 times and change the content. The second item is going to be tours. Then we will have about us, offer, and contact. Okay, that's it about the first part. Let's go ahead and create the paragraph. Let's assign to p element class footer paragraph and put here some content, copyright. Then for the copyright sign, I'm going to use HTML5 entity. We need ampersand copy semicolon, then code and create, all rights reserved. Alright, that's it about the markup. Let's go ahead and add to it some CSS. First of all, I'm going to insert here new comments, footer, end of footer. Then select the footer element. And first of all, let's change the background color. I'm going to use gray color. And also I want to create some space inside of the footer using padding. Let's set it to 4 rem on top, then 0 on the right side, 2 rem at the bottom, and 0 on the left side. Alright, next I'm going to place the list in the center, and for that let's go ahead and select footer list. I'm going to make it flex container using display flex. And then, in order to place the items in the center, let's use justify content center. Alright, so the list items are placed in the center and now we can customize them. Let's go ahead and select the link. At first, let's increase the font size, make it 2 rem. Then change the color, make it white. And also, I want to create some space on the right and left sides of the items using margin with the values 0 and 2 rem. Okay, after that we're going to create some space inside of the links using padding. But before that, in order to make the space visible, let's change the background color of the links for a while. Let's make it red. And then create some space, use padding. Let's set the space on top and bottom to 0.3 rem and then 3 rem on the right and left sides. And also increase the space between the letters using letter spacing 0.3 rem. Alright, that's it about the links. Let's change the background color, make it gray. Okay, before we move on to the paragraph, I'm going to add a hover effect to the links. I'm going to rotate them and also add to them box shadow on hover. So let's go ahead and select footer link with the hover. Then I'm going to use transform with rotate function. Let's rotate links by -10 degrees. And also add here box shadow with the values 0, 2 rem, 3 rem, and the black color. And finally, let's use transition. We need here all and the duration 0.2 seconds. Okay, so if we hover over the links, then we will get a nice and cool effect. Alright, that's it about the links. Let's go ahead and take care of the paragraph. Let's select it. At first, I'm going to align the text in the center. Then define the font size, make it 1.5 rem. Change the color. In this case, I'm going to use secondary color. Then let's create some space between the letters. Make it 0.2 rem. And finally, I'm going to create some space at the top using margin top 5 rem. Okay, so with the footer we are done. It was kind of simple one, but I think it looks nice. Actually, step by step we are moving to the end of this project, but we still have some work to do. Next, we have to start to work on navigation. First of all, let's take a look at the finished project. As you can see, at the top left corner of the web page, we have a fixed menu icon. If I click it, then the navbar will display. Links are coming from top to bottom with nice transition effects. They change opacity on hover. And also navbar has its full screen background represented by the image. Besides that, we have X closing button at the top right corner of the navbar. And if I click it, then we'll get back to the main page. Okay, so that's it, what we're going to build. I'm going to insert this part right above the header. So let's insert new comments. Navbar, end of navbar, then open a div element and assign to it a couple of classes. The first one is going to be open navbar icon. As for the second one, it should be navbar icon. So the menu icons will consist of 3 lines. They will be represented by the div elements. So let's open it with class line. Then duplicate this line twice. Next we need to open another div element, which should be the wrapper. So assign to it class navbar wrapper. Next we need nav element with the class navbar. So inside the nav element we will have 2 different parts. The first one is going to be X closing button. As for the second one, it should be the navigation list. So let's go ahead and open div element and assign to it classes close navbar icon and navbar icon. Then insert here 2 lines, open div element and assign to it 2 classes. The first one is going to be the common class line. As for the second one, it should be line 1. Then duplicate this line of code and change the class name. We need here line 2. Alright, let's go ahead and insert here the second part. I'm in the list of the navigation items. Let's open div element and assign to it class navList. And then pass here a couple of link elements. Let's assign to it class name navLink. And insert here the first navigation item, home. Let's duplicate link element 4 times and change the items. The second one is going to be towards. Then we will have about us. offer, and contact. Alright, so that's it about the HTML markup. I'm going to start to write some CSS. Let's go ahead and insert new comments right after the common styles. We need here Navbar, then end of Navbar. Then select the Navbar icon. Actually, this class name belongs to both buttons. Let's define width and height. I'm going to set both of them to 5.5 rem. And also change the background color. Make it white. Alright, so now both buttons are visible. Right now it's hard to distinguish them, so it would be better if we hide the second button as well as the list, because right now we're going to work on the first button. So let's select Navbar wrapper and assign to it display none. Alright, let's go ahead and position the icon. I'm going to select it with its individual class, which is open Navbar icon. Let's go ahead and set its position to fixed. Then define top and left properties. I'm going to set both of them to 6.5 rem. Okay, as you see right now the icon is not visible because it has ended up behind the header, and in order to fix that, let's use z-index property and set it to 200. Alright, now the problem is fixed. Next I'm going to make the icon rounded. Actually we need both buttons to be rounded, so let's assign to the Navbar icon border radius 50%. And also change the cursor, make it pointer. Okay, next I'm going to take care of the lines. First of all, let's go ahead and display them. I'm going to select lines using the common class Navbar icon, line. Let's define its height, make it 0.2 rem. Then set width to 3.5 rem. And also change the background color. Use here light gray. So right now the items are placed on top of each other. We need some space between them, and also we have to place them in the center of the icon. For that I'm going to use our predefined class center. We need this class for both of the icons. Also we need to change the flex direction and make it a column, because display flex aligns the flex items horizontally in a row by default. And finally we need space between the lines. For that let's select again line, but now with open Navbar icon class, and create space using margin with the values 0.3 rem and 0. Alright, so the first Navbar icon is customized, and now we have to move on and start to work on the navigation itself. Right now it is hidden, so let's get rid of display none. So the wrapper will take up the entire viewport, I mean 100% of the width and height of the viewport. So let's set width to 100 viewport width. As for the height, let's make it 100 viewport height. And also change the background color. I'm going to use here RGBA value with white color. Let's place here 255 3 times, and also the opacity 0.7. Alright, so right now that's the way how Navbar wrapper looks like. We need to define its position. It should have position fixed. And also I'm going to set left and bottom properties, both of them to 0. So right now Navbar wrapper ended up behind the header, and now let's use again the index property to fix that problem. Let's set the index to 300. Okay, let's move on and start to work on the navbar itself. I mean the nav element. Let's select it and define width and height. I'm going to set both of them to 100% and also change the background color let's use here royal blue. So now the navbar takes up the entire width and height of the viewport. We need to add some space around it, like it's in case of the header. As you remember, the amount of space on each side equals to 3.5 rem. So therefore, let's define padding and assign to it the first value, 3.5 rem. So the space is created, but as you can see, we have a little issue on the right side. Here we have a scroll bar. Navbar wrapper has position set to fixed and it doesn't take into account the scroll bar. So we need to increase the amount of the space on the right side. The size of the scroll bar equals to 20 pixels, so we need to make the padding on the right side 5.5 rem. And then we need 3.5 rem twice. Okay, so the problem is fixed. Let's go ahead and take care of the closing navbar icon. It's going to be placed at the top right corner of the navbar. So let's select it and make its position absolute. In order to place the icon according to its parent element, let's assign to navbar position relative. And then define the top and right properties. I'm going to set top property to 2.5 rem. As for the right position, let's make it 3 rem. Okay, so the icon is positioned. Let's place those lines in the right way and display the X. First of all, let's select them with common class name, close navbar icon, line, and make the position absolute. Now we need to rotate each of the lines by 40 degrees, but with opposite directions. Let's go ahead and select the first line with class line 1. We need to use transform with rotate function. Let's put here 40 degrees. Then I'm going to duplicate this entire code, change the class. We need here line 2, and instead of 40 degrees, we need minus 40 degrees. Alright, so the X navbar icon is customized and it's time to move on and change the background for navbar. We no longer need that blue background, so let's get rid of it and insert here linear gradient with RGBA values. I'm going to use black color twice, but with different opacities. In the first case, the opacity is going to be 0.5. As for the second RGBA value, we need the opacity 0.3. Next, I'm going to specify the URL. I'm going to select image called navbar bg.jpg. It's placed in images folder. Then we need center and no repeat. And also define the size of the background. Let's make it cover. Alright, so the image is set as the background, and now it's time to take care of the navigation list. Right now, links are not quite visible, so first of all, let's select them using class navlink. Increase the font size, make it 3 rem. Then change the font weight. I'm going to make links bolder. Let's set font weight to 700. Change the color, make it white. And transform text into uppercase. Okay, so now we can see the links, and the next thing that I want to do is to define the background color for each navigation item. We can do it from CSS. I mean, we are able to select each of the items with nth child pseudo class and assign to each of them different background color. But I'm not going to do that from CSS. Let's use JavaScript. First of all, I'm going to create an array of colors. Let's put here 5 different colors. The first one is going to be 6495 ED. Then the next one is going to be 7FFF D4. Then I'm going to use FFA07A. Then next we need F08080. And the last color is going to be AFEEEE. Alright, after that we need to select all the links. Then we need to loop through them and assign the background color to each of the items. So let's go ahead and select them using the query selector all method. Let's specify here the class name navlink. So in this case, the query selector all method returns an array-like object, which is called nodelist. I'm going to transform nodelist into an array, and then we will loop through the array using the for each method. So in order to transform nodelist into an array, we need to use array.from method. And then after that, we can use the for each method. So for each allows us to loop through an array and execute a function for each array item. So we need to pass here callback function, which will take one parameter, and it's going to be the current item. And then we need to define background color. For that, I'm going to use style and CSS text properties. So we need item.style.css text. So now we need to pass here some CSS code. For that, I'm going to use ES6 template strings. We need to open backticks. Then insert here background color. So now we need to use the values from colors array separately on each iteration. We need to define the index number of the colors, and for that I'm going to create new variable called I. Notice that I used here let declaration. So this variable is going to be something like counter. By default it should be equal to 0. Now down below we have to use a $sign with curly braces. Now we have to pass here colors array, and in square brackets we need to indicate the index number. So we need to pass here I followed by the increment operator, which is expressed with double plus signs. So on the first iteration the index number is going to be 0 and the first color will be used. Then on the second iteration the counter will become 1 and the second color will be used, and so on. So as you can see, each navigation item has its own background color. Okay, next I'm going to expand links all the way to the bottom of the navbar. So let's go ahead and select navlist and make its height 100%. And also besides that I'm going to make it flex container using display flex. So now the items are stretched from top to bottom and they take up 100% of the height. Next we need to take care of the width. Those items should take out the entire width as well. So let's define width and make it 100%. Alright, so right now everything is going fine. I want to place those items in the center of those columns. For that, let's assign to each of the link element class center. Okay, after that, let's decrease the opacity, make it 0.8. As you see, the opacity has affected on the button as well. So let's define the index property for the button and make it 300. Alright, next I'm going to create a hover effect. I want to change the color of the items and also increase the opacity on hover. So let's go ahead and select navlink with hover. Make its opacity 1 and also change the color, make it primary. Besides that, I'm going to use transition with the values all and 0.3 second. Okay, so the hover effect works fine, and now I'm going to make the icons work. So by default, I'm going to place Navbar wrapper down below and make it hidden. For that, let's change the value of the bottom for Navbar wrapper and make it minus 100%, and also make opacity 0. So the navbar wrapper is hidden. Next, I want to place the navigation items up, because once we click the menu icon, they should move from top to bottom. For that, let's assign to the navlink position relative, and then define top position, make it minus 100%. Alright, now we have to use JavaScript. Actually, we will create class change in CSS, which will be added to the container from JavaScript. So let's create a variable in which I'm going to store the container. Let's call this variable container, and then select this element using query selector method. Now we have to select the menu icon, and we need to attach to it click event. Let's select the element again using query selector method. I'm going to specify the class name open navbar icon, and then let's attach to it event listener. We need here click event and the arrow function. So once we click the menu icon, we have to add to the container class change. Therefore, we have to insert here container dot class list. As you know, class list stores all the classes that the element has. It should be followed by the add method, which adds class to the class list. In the parentheses, let's specify class name change. Okay, that's it about the first item. Let's move on to the second item. I mean the X closing button. Once we click it, we need to remove the class change from the container. So let's go ahead and duplicate this code. Then change the class name. We need here close navbar icon. And also, instead of add method, use remove. Alright, that's it about JavaScript. Let's go back to CSS. Now we have to create the class change. Then we need to select navbar wrapper. In order to display the wrapper back, we need to set its bottom position to 0, and we need to increase the opacity. We have to make it 1. Then again, we need to change the class, but for the navlink now, as you know, links are placed above, and we need to make their top position 0. So let's select change, followed by navlink, and make the top position 0. So if I click the menu icon, then the navbar will display, and if we click the X, it should hide. So actually we're almost done. We need to customize effects slightly. Also, we need to display the navigation items in order with some delays. Let's assign to navbar wrapper transition with the following values. We need bottom 0.5 second, then opacity 0.2 second. We need the same transition down here, but with some delay. So let's grab this line of code, paste it here, and add here delay 0.25 second. Now if I click the icon, the navbar will display with some smooth transition. But actually that's not what we want. We need to display the navigation items in the order. So we need transitions for each of the items, but with different delay time. Let's go ahead and select again change, followed by navlink with the pseudo class nth child. Let's specify here the first item 1, and insert here transition with the following values. We need top property with duration 1 second and the delay time 0.4 second. Then opacity 0.3 second. And the color 0.3 second as well. Let's duplicate this code 4 times and change the numbers of the items and the delay time. So for the second item we need 0.6 second. Then for the third item, let's use here 0.8 second. For the fourth item we need 1 second. As for the last item, I mean the fifth item, we need delay 1.2 seconds. Alright, so as you can see, items are displaying in order and actually we are almost done. The only thing that we have to do is to make the items hidden while they are placed up. For that, I'm going to use overflow hidden, but according to the Y direction. Alright, so now everything works perfectly and actually we're done with our project. All the sections are built and customized, and finally we have to make the project responsive to different screen sizes. Alright, first of all, let's inspect the page and turn on the responsive mode. As you know, we have built this project on that resolution, and now I'm going to find the different breakpoints on which we will need to make some changes. Throughout this part we will use CSS media queries. So let's go ahead and find the first breakpoint. I think we need to make some changes once we make the width of the window lower than 1200 pixels. On that breakpoint I'm going to place cards vertically in a column. Let's check the Navbar. It looks fine. The only thing that we see here is a little space on the right side. We see that space because in the responsive mode the scroll bar is not visible, and that's the reason of that issue, so you can just ignore it because on smaller devices it will look good. Okay, let's create a CSS media query. I'm going to specify the max width as 1200 pixels. Then select cards wrapper. Change the flex direction. I'm going to make it column. And also we need align items center in order to place the cards in the center. Alright, so the cards are placed vertically and now we have to add some space between them. So let's select the card itself and add here margin 3 rem on top and bottom and 0 on the left and right sides. Alright, finally I'm going to increase the width of the backgrounds of the stories. So select story BG and make its width 85%. Okay, so on that breakpoint we are done. Everything else looks fine. Let's move on and find the next one. I think the next one should be 1000 pixels because on that breakpoint some of the elements need to customize. So let's use again CSS media. And specify the max width as 1000 pixels. Let's check the Navbar. I think it would be better if we place navigation items vertically in a column. For that we need to change the flex direction. So let's select the list and change the flex direction, make it column. So right now they are placed vertically, but we have here an empty space. Those items should take up this space, And in order to achieve that, let's use one of the Flexbox properties called FlexGrow. Let's select nav link and set FlexGrow to 1. This property allows the flex items to take up the available space inside the container. Okay, let's move on and take care of the header. I'm going to place heading and paragraph in the center of the page. So let's select the header text and define its position, make it absolute. Then we need to set top and left properties, both of them to 50%. And in order to center the element perfectly, we have to use transform with translate function, and we have to pass here -50% for both directions. I mean x-axis and y-axis. Okay, so the heading and paragraph are placed in the center, but as you can see, they ended up behind the air balloon. In order to fix that, let's set the index to 10. Okay, next I'm going to decrease the font size of the heading and paragraph. So let's select heading. Change the font size, make it 6 rem. Next, I'm going to select header paragraph. Let's make its font size 2.5 rem. Alright, with the header text we are done. Let's move on to the next section. We need to decrease here the size of the heading. So let's select it and make its font size 6 rem. Okay, that's it about this section. Next comes the story section. I think from this breakpoint we no longer need to skew the backgrounds, so I'm going to give them the shape of the rectangle. Let's go ahead and select story BG, then use transform, skew X, and make it 0. Next we need the story itself. Let's grab this line of code and paste it here. Alright, besides that I'm going to place the content vertically. For that we need to change the flex direction. So let's make it column and also align items in the center. Alright, so the last thing regarding the stories is to create some space under the images. Let's go ahead and select the image and assign to it margin bottom with the value of 3 rem. Okay, that's it about the story section. Finally, I'm going to take care of the footer. I'm going to decrease the space inside of the links, and also I'm going to decrease the space between them. So let's go ahead and select the link. Then define padding as 0.3 rem on top and bottom and 2 rem on the right and left sides. And also we need to use margin with 0 and 1 rem. Alright, so I think we are done on that breakpoint. Everything looks nice. Let's go ahead and find the next one. So it should be 800 pixels. So let's go ahead and create new media with a max width 800 pixels. So on that breakpoint I'm going to hide the paragraph at all. Let's go ahead and select it and assign to it display none. Next, let's decrease the size of the heading of the cart section. So let's select popular tours heading and make its font size 5 rem. Alright, so actually everything seems to be fine except for the contact section and the footer. I'm going to decrease the width of the form element, so let's go ahead and select it and set its width to 90%. As for the footer, I'm going to place the links vertically in a column, so let's go ahead and select footer list, change the flex direction, make it column. Also, we need to align the items in the center. And lastly, let's add some space between the links, select footer link and add to it margin, 1 rem on top and bottom and 0 on the right and left sides. Alright, so actually that's it about this breakpoint. Let's go ahead and find the next one. So the next one is going to be, I think, 650 pixels. So let's create new media query and specify the max width as 650 pixels. So on that breakpoint, I'm going to extend the sections to the entire page. So let's select the container and get rid of the margin, make it 0. Then I'm going to take care of the navbar. Let's start with icons. Select open navbar icon and change top and left positions. I'm going to set both of them to 2.5 rem. Before we move on to the next icon, I want to get rid of the space around the navbar. So let's select navbar wrapper and set padding to 0. Then select the second icon, which is close navbar icon, and change the right position, make it 4 rem. Alright, that's it about the navbar. Let's go ahead and select header. I'm going to set its height to 100 VH. Alright, so we're done with header. Let's move on to the contact section. I'm going to decrease the size of the heading. So let's go ahead and select contact heading and make its font size 6 rem. Also, I'm going to add some styles to the contact form. Let's change the amount of the padding, make it 2 rem. As for the height, let's make it 40 rem. Alright, so that's it about 650 pixels. And finally, we need to customize the project on the last breakpoint, which I think is going to be 500 pixels. So let's go ahead and create new media with the max width 500 pixels. So the easiest way to make the elements look nice on that breakpoint, I thought of to decrease the font size of the HTML element. As you know, right now it equals to 62.5%, and I'm going to decrease it to 45%. This code will have effect on the size of every element because throughout this project we were using rem as the measurement unit. Okay, so I think everything looks pretty nice. And finally, we are done. We have finished building this project, so Congratulations, I hope you enjoyed it, learned lots of cool and interesting stuff. If you like this project, please thumbs up, comment below, share the video, subscribe to our channel and click the bell to get notified on coming projects. Okay, see you next time.